Firstly, thanks guys, thanks for taking time for this. This is new to me. I have always been a developer. I never been on a stage, so I'm trying to come out of that comfortable zone. So if I do any mistakes, please sorry me for that, right? The thing is, I work for a company called Kong, which is a API gateway company. I work here as a senior technical customer success manager, and it's a huge, looks like a very big role, but it is not, right? Here I help customers to improve their API security and API observability posture. I also look into API governance. Since I come from the technical background, I connect easily with the enterprise customers who are more technical. Basically, I'll having conversation with CTOs, executives, solution architects, Devops leads, right? So it makes more sense, and I think that's where I build that gut to come and speak on this stage, right? And prior to this company, I worked for a company called Accelerator, which is again a data observability and a couple of startups. And in today's session, I'll be talking only in the practical use cases that I've seen with these enterprise customers, right? I'm not going to have anything theory. It's all the practical use cases that I've seen and how we're able to solve that, right? So basically, I'll be concentrating on API security and API observability, right? So I have very few examples, so I'm not going to take much time. Moving on, yeah, so what happened exactly a month back, I met with an accident. It was a funny story where I was having my own time. I boost myself like that I'm a safe rider, but that was not the case exactly a month back. This taxi driver, that what you're seeing, he was coming, he's not coming towards me. I felt like he's coming into me, right? It was that, and I lost my balance. I fell down. My whole body was bruised. My palm was badly hurt. I'm kind of still recovering from that, right? But here is the thing. I was wearing a very good robust helmet that you can see there, right? Though it is well damaged, that saved my head, right? And actually lately it got me thinking, sometimes even you think that you're safe and nothing's going to happen to you. The external factors like it can be a road or it can be a taxi driver, someone like that, who will bring you down to the ground, right? So I have to be protective and take precautionary actions. Exactly the same way with API securities. If you don't have precautionary measures for security and observability, the impact that you see in future will be huge. That's what I'm seeing right now. Most of the CTOs, they don't tend to take decisions now because that's cost for them, right? Let's say they want to improve their security posture, there's finance attached to it, right? Convincing what is the ROI, I cannot convey my ROI by saying values, right? It's not going to be the case. They have to think future and take decision today, right? Finally, moving on to the use cases that I really wanted to speak today is that, firstly, one of my enterprise customer, there are many enterprise customers who use Salesforce, which is a CRM tool, and they wanted to have this chatbot connectivity to the Salesforce, right? Now, you know, we are all moving from UI to API, right? UI is being very slow nowadays, right? Especially with Salesforce, we know that it is source of all the informations. My pre-sales teams uses it, post-sales team uses it, engineering team, support team, everyone uses it. Hence, the delay of response from the Salesforce, it's like huge. And being an engineer, it's kind of, I really can't, it's not okay with me. I need a fast response. I think that's where my customer told, okay, I don't want to go with UI. Let me query Salesforce from API. I think that's where they built a chatbot, and they will ask on the chatbot, what is the renewal date for my customer, right? So he'll give you the information exactly the same way what other speakers were talking about, all APIs, right? So the problem is not that the technical implementation went smooth, there was no problem at all, but the problem was, this was not a attack scenario, but it was a well-thought scenario. Like what if an attacker, or maybe a deterministic attacker, get the access token of this chatbot, because that's the entry point, right? If you get access to that, what will happen is that, firstly, obviously the access token will be compromised, then he'll start reading the data from the Salesforce. Though there's RBAC applied on top of this user, he'll be still able to read the financial data, or it can be the support data, it can be any data, which is a breach for any customer for that matter, right? So basically what's happening here, Salesforce being a server here is getting authenticated. Right? That's a normal TLS flow, it's happening, but the client is not getting authenticated, where chatbot is not getting authenticated, right? So as I'm speaking, you would have already guessed the solution here. We have implemented simple MTLS plugin to this use case. What I've done, I've enabled MTLS at the client side, meaning it's not just a server now, I want client also to get authenticated. So next time, if let's say as attacker, if he has access key to log into Salesforce, even though he has access key, since he does not have a certificate with him, he may not be able to get data from the Salesforce. You read what I'm saying? Right. Similarly, let's say that like if you having this question, what if the certificate itself is getting stolen, right? In this scenario, what is the thing, right? I think that's where the private keys will come into picture. We will be storing his private keys into the KMS, which is explicitly built for this scenario, right? In that way, it becomes super hard for any attacker to read the data, right? Not necessarily to write the data. Even reading data becomes deterministic here, right? So this was my first use case, and moving on to my second use case, which is a very interesting use case that I've seen with one of my customer. If you see the password reset endpoint, if you know for a fact, these are the most targeted and most vulnerable APIs, because these password resets are public, right? Anyone can, if you know a login username to this password UI, it can be Instagram, it can be Facebook, it can be any application, right? If you know the username or a user ID, then it can actually trigger this password reset endpoint, right? So let us see what is the attack vectors here. Firstly, automated OTP guessing during password reset, meaning I can actually automate and have this scripting to automate the OTPs, right? So let's say there is a window of 30 seconds for you to insert this OTP into the password reset. So for an attacker, this instant is enough for him to guess that. Like you can do permutation, combination. You can use multiple IPs to guess that OTP, right? So it will be easy for him to attack. And secondly, brute force reset tokens. As I say, like you can have again automated script to trigger this password reset API every time, right? You don't have to do it manually. You can have automation script so that every time you don't have to do this manually. And thirdly, flood user inbox with reset emails, which goes without saying. Then enumerate valid accounts through response timing. What does that mean by that is, by understanding the response time of an API, you understand that whether that user is valid or not. I can tell you this, right? Let's say that this response is taking longer. That means there is a backend logic running. That means that's a valid user. So that will be a intimation to the attacker. Okay, this may probably be the valid user that he has to work with. Right? So let us see the enterprise impact of this. As I told, the massive emails that will be directly proportional to the infra cost. Then legitimate user account lockouts. Yes, even if this user is not an actual user, since the lot many request is coming to his account, the account will be locked. Then finally, obviously that will be frustrating to any user for that matter. And account takeover. Let's say in this time period, if an attacker is able to read the OTP, what happens is that the account will be leaked, right? So I can get inside the account, then the fund will be lost. Maybe it's a security breach, right? Irrespective of what application, maybe a banking, finance, maybe a read application, there will be a security breach. Let us see how we handle this scenario, right? It's very important to understand this. There are two ways that you can actually handle this scenario. First thing, at the application layer, and secondly, at the gateway layer, right? Understand, when I say at the application layer, whenever there's a reset point endpoint is made, if there are too many requests to this endpoint, that means you can actually put a rate limiting at the application layer, right? Basically, this logic you have to imbibe here, right? See, which makes your code redundant. If I'm a solution architect here, I don't want to put this inside my application. I want to put this at the gateway layer, so that I'll keep my code modular, right? So if there is similar use case with other microservices, I don't want to recode it again with other microservices, right? Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. We have to do this at the API gateway layer. I think that's what we did. What we did, there are two ways we counter-attack this scenario. One is by limit by source. Once I understand the source of this use case scenario, then I'll put a rate limiting plugin to that IP address, right? And secondly, limit by target, meaning this was a custom solution that we built. What we did was, for every request, we took the username from the response body, we inserted it to the header. Once we have this email ID at the header, then we start putting rate limiting plugin on top of that user. So every time there's more attacks coming to that particular rate limiting, to that reset password API, there will be a rate limiting plugin to that, right? So it was very easy solution, though use case looks very simple, but the solution and the impact of that was humongous. Like customers like quite happy with this implementation, trust me. Right? Even if you're facing this, maybe a developers here, DevOps engineers here, leads here. If you're thinking to build anything on the microservices, right, you can do it. Correct? anything can be achieved with the technical, with the AI power, you can do the implementation. What is the decision factor is that you don't want to do the repetitive task again and again. So make sure you put this at the gateway layer and make your code modular. I think that's the takeaway. Any questions before I move on? I have a last practical example, which is on observability. I basically come from the observability background as well. I work for a company called Accelerator, which is into data observability. So what happened here is that one of my customer told that 25% of API that are coming to his application is not valid. He just made a statement, right? Another customer, which is not a problem statement, maybe my observation because I come from that background, I understood that every time they're reporting an incident, I understood to understand the problem itself, it is taking time for this operation team. It's not about solution. Once you know the problem statement, solution is always straightforward. Right? So understanding the problem itself is a problem. So let us see what is the consequences of these use cases, right? First thing is the financial risk, meaning let's say if I'm saying 25% of this API traffic, that is directly proportional to the billing, right? You should understand how API gateway work. API gateway always work with the API consumption. If a customer is saying my 25% of the API is not valid, that he's saying I'm paying more to you. Like why should I do that? Which is a valid scenario, right? And secondly is the operational risk, meaning now the operation team should understand, okay, is it a bot which is doing it or is it someone who is trying to spoof, right? That's the operation overhead. Secondly, it's a security risk, where if bot is in place, that's obviously a security risk for us. And production impact, that is for the second use case. When I say production impact, if we are taking more time to solve a problem, then it's a business loss, right? Because I work with enterprise customers, big banking customers, like top 5 banking customers. These customers, even for them 1 second or 2 seconds, explicitly customers like who are using this trading platform, right? Even for them, 5 seconds, it matters to them, right? So we cannot take chances to increase the resolution time, right? Let us very quietly see like how we are able to handle this. Since I come from the observability background, I was able to give a solution to this customer. What we did was, I understood their platform end to end, so I took some time to understand that. Second, we implemented OTIL across their system, right? So I've seen customers implementing this OTIL, meaning open telemetry at the gateway layer or at the LB layer or at the network layer. They're not essentially doing at the application layer, which is super important, right? So when you have OTIL across the system, what happens is that if there is any error it may be in any system, right? You can easily pinpoint where is the error. Once you have that, the resolution is a straightforward to you, right? So we were successful in doing that, and the customer was quite happy with that, right? I'm also displaying I have duplicated my enterprise customer dashboard here if you see. The beauty of this dashboard is that there is no application, there is no infra metrics here, if you can see. It's all API metrics, right? I've seen all these customers using observability tools like Dynatrace, Datadog, New Relic. There's so many open source observability tools, right? It is fantastic. They're doing infra monitoring. They're doing application monitoring. I'm okay with that. But they're not doing API metrics monitoring. When I say API metrics monitoring, if you see the top performing APIs here, and you can also see what is the error code there. If someone able to understand if an API is getting too many requests, right, then they can actually apply rate limiting plugin on the fly. Right? You really don't have to sit and dig deep and understand which API I need to do an API, rate limiting plugin, right? So basically what I'm trying to tell here is that you can do it will help you to make technical decisions. Without doing lots of due diligence, you can make a technical decision. First point. Secondly, you can also do a business decision where you can see the API request rate there, which is directly proportional to the how much provision, how many nodes that you have to provision, how many pods you have to provision, right? That is helping even for the executives to take this business decision whether I have to increase my nodes or not, right? And what's the takeaway for you from this slide is that, see, I have seen customers, as I told, they're doing application monitoring, memory monitoring, CPU monitoring, everyone does that, right? But my concern is that why are they not doing API metrics monitoring? When I say API metrics, when I talked about all these policies, plugins, rate limiting, traffic control, for API gateway you should know this, how we are enabling this plugin. Basically this acts as a wrapper on top of APIs, right? I just go to UI and enable that. Okay, if I enable bot detection plugin, it just does that. So it's already imbibed in the code. You don't have to do anything, right? So if someone has a privilege to enable that, same way he will be having the privilege to disable that, right? So my problem is that I need to have alerts on top of APIs. If someone is doing some CRUD operation on the API, I need an alert. right? That will save your life. Because that happened to one of my enterprise customers. What happened was it became a big incident and that was a great loss for them, right? So my takeaway is that please have API metrics monitoring. Look into this. You can take this as a reference, connect me. This is just a template that I've seen. But since I work with these customers, I get to collage all their best practices. I've come up with a template which can help you to make API metrics monitoring, right? Any questions? Yeah. Finally, back to my helmet story. See, when I was talking to my friend that I met with an accident, and he told me that he also met with an accident where he was wearing a half helmet, right? And after that incident, he started to use full-fledged helmet where, like my point is, why do you want to take chances with your life, right? Similar to the API, if you're not having this API policies, securities, observability in place, now, then the impact and the consequences that you're going to see, it will be huge because I'm already seeing that already, right? I'll be a good example for you. So finally, though you have all these securities, everything is in place, what is important is that you have to make sure you take that ownership, right? That is directly proportional to the governance, right? So it's not always APIs will do for you, right? As a human, we have to take that ownership, responsibility, and we have to be aware what's happening across the API, right? That will definitely help us for having solving the consequences. That's my time, guys, and thanks. I made some sense to the group here. Yeah.